In this video, we're going to take a look at the code so we have an overview and know where to find everything when it's time to edit. Our code follows the conventional structure of Django applications. The primary directory, which is the name you provided when you created your application, serves as a control center for the application. Generally, editing this directory is unnecessary. Instead, focus your attention on the templates and web app directories. The templates directory houses all of your HTML files, while the web app directory is dedicated to your Python and static files. Static files are items like images, JavaScript, and CSS. Let's move on to the code flow. How do we tell the application what to write to the pages? In general, code flow will start at urls.py. You have a urls.py here in web apps directory. This is where you will add routes you need and remove routes that you will not be using. These are controlled by adding or removing the path function. The path function may contain three parameters, which are the URL pattern, the view function that is called when the URL pattern is matched, and a unique name to identify the pattern. As mentioned, the second parameter of the path variable is the view function to call. In this template, all code either goes to views.py or API_handlers.py. Let's start with the top parameter, which is blank, meaning it's just the domain with no pattern added after. We see it calls views.home. So let's take a look at the function home in views.py. Here we can see the home function, which takes the request object as a parameter. The request parameter represents an HTTP request sent by the client. It encapsulates information about the request, including the HTTP method headers, user session, user data, and any submitted data forms. We can access various attributes and methods of the request object to extract relevant data, such as GET or POST parameters, session data, user information, and more. This allows for the processing of user input, authentication, and the rendering of appropriate templates or JSON responses. Next, we notice the context variable. This is a dictionary-like object that contains data and variables to be passed from the view to the templates during the rendering process. It allows developers to send dynamic data to the template, enabling the template to access and display this data. The context variable typically includes information that needs to be presented to the user, such as database query results, form data, user-specific information, or any other data that is relevant to the template being rendered. By passing the context variable to the template, the developer can dynamically generate HTML content based on the provided data. The context variable plays a vital role in Django's template rendering process, enabling the seamless integration of data from the backend with the presentation layer, thereby facilitating the creation of dynamic and interactive web pages. In this example, we demonstrate the use of the static and reverse functions. Both of these functions are getting the full URL and adding them to the dictionary. As a side note, in most cases, items like these app cards would be stored in the database rather than hard-coded. The final line of code here is the render function, which we pass the request, the template path that we want to render, and the context. This will process the rendering of the template, in this case the home.html, and disperse the context data as directed in the template before rendering the final results to the UI. We will now take a look at home.html template to see what is happening there. At the top, we see that it extends app_base.html. I'll go ahead and open that. App_base is where we can edit the structure of the application, the menu, and the footer. You should also notice links to the CSS files. These are where you can modify color schemes as well. In this file, there are also block templates defined, which we will be able to access from any page that extends it. Let's jump back to the home page where we can see this in action. The first one we see is the block title. This will change the title of the page to whatever we provide. Next, we see block script. There are no scripts added. However, there were 2 comments added in here which will render to the page as comments in the code. On many of the other template examples, there are both scripts and CSS files linked here. The last block template is content. This is where you would usually access the context sent from the server side. You can see this is mostly just HTML, but as we scroll down, we find the curly bracket followed by the %sign. Inside that is a for loop which accesses the app_cards array which we sent in context. It works like any for loop and generates the cards using the variables included, as you see here. Keep in mind that the context is a dictionary. You can add as many fields in it as you need. They can be any type that you need, and you can access them in loops, ifs, or even directly by wrapping the variable in double curly braces. Before we get too far, we should take a quick look at the other handler of the routes, which I mentioned earlier, API_handler.py. This file is where we process API requests. I'm not going to go through all the logic in these functions here. Later videos will discuss each widget and how to modify them. I would like to point out a couple differences from the views.py. First is the usage of the decorator @CSRF_exempt. This is used so that our API can be used by anyone, not just by us. If you would not like your API to be open to everyone, you should not add this decorator to your functions. The other major difference is the return. Instead of rendering a template, we are returning a JSON response, which contains a JSON object. As you might guess, usually these are requested from an AJAX call or form post on the client side. Our next topic is widgets. The widgets currently are just examples of how to do certain common things with your data to help you tell the story in the UI. They are all separated out into their own template, and they have their JavaScript, CSS, and Python code separated to support them. You will want to blend these in with the rest of your application when using them. I'm not going to walk through editing each of them in this video, but you will find information about how to do this on each page. The how-to will include each file that is used to create them, as you can see here. Now let's move to database and migrations. Django simplifies database integration by providing an intuitive object relational mapping. This allows developers to work with the database models using Python objects. This takes away much of the complexity involved in dealing with the SQL queries directly and enables the management of database relationships and operations through simple Python code. Additionally, Django's built-in administration interface and powerful query capabilities further streamline database management, making it easier to perform tasks such as data retrieval, manipulation, and storage. Let's take a quick look at the models.py. Again, we will just briefly look at these here. You can see the first one is organization, and all of the fields are added within this class. I can open the database and expand the schema you find the organization table. I can open this to see the columns. How did they get there? Well, after we add a data model or edit a data model, we must tell Django we did so. We need to run python manage.py make migrations. This will create a migration file in the migrations directory. Next, we need to apply the migration by saying python manage.py migrate. This will update the database with what we put in the model. Finally, we should tell the admin page to display it by registering it in the admin.py file. To view the admin page, go to the site URL and add /admin to the URL. So http://127.0.0.1:8000/admin. Then log in with the super user you created. There, underneath Web App, you will see the models that were created from model.py. You will also see other applications listed with some models under them. These are simply part of the authentication. So I feel like we've made our way around the code and touched on where to add, remove, and edit code. Please watch the next and upcoming videos on modifying the widgets, and let me know if you have any questions by leaving them in the comments below. Thank you.